What's up, guys? I'm Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, in education, health, and social well-being. In today's video, we are going to be doing a full recap of Powerlifting American Nationals. We're basically going to be going over all 5 of my clients who competed. I'm going to be taking you guys through what the game plans were for each, what the priorities were, and what the order of priorities were, as well as kind of telling you, like, hey, here's what the game plan was. Here's what we ended up doing on the day, maybe due to having to make some adjustments due to like competition or weight loss, whatever it may be, just to give you guys a full overview. And the reason why I want to do this video is because obviously, people have their podcasts and stuff like that where they have their predictions and stuff like that, and then usually post the podcast. They'll bring the lifters on and stuff like that, or bring us coaches on, and they'll talk about how the day went, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important for you guys to, have the full context and full scope of what's going on as far as like, hey, here's what the plan was. Here's why we did what we did. Because when you guys are watching the live stream, it's really hype. It's really fun, right? But all you guys are seeing is us putting in certain numbers, and maybe you're not sure why we're doing certain numbers, or hey, why'd you do this instead of that? Or like, what was the game plan here? And I think it's just really cool for you all to get a little more of that context, so that you can really see the full thought process and planning that goes into everything. So we're just going to be making our way through all 5 lifters. For those of you who don't know, my clients competed were Megan Helbert in the 52 kg weight class, Chris Perez in the 83 kg weight class, Brandon Pitre in the 93 kg weight class, Ashton Ruska in the 105 kg weight class, and Bob Matthews in the 120 kg weight class. So we're just going to go in order, kind of giving you a little bit of background on like what their prep was looking like very briefly, as well as once again showing you what the game plan was, what it ended up doing on the day, and explaining why. So that being said, let's get right into it. All right, guys, so starting off with Megan. Anyone who's been keeping up with her or kind of keeping up with the podcast knows that Megan actually signed up for the 52 kg weight class at last year's nationals, but unfortunately did not make weight. Had she made weight, she was pretty much like, for sure going to win, but she didn't make weight. That was when she was under another coach. She started with me soon after that. And the whole time, right, like when she came with me, the goal was being able to come back a year later, make weight, and keep performance high, right? So that was the overall goal. So when it came to Megan, our 3 main priorities, the first one was to simply make weight, because in our minds, if we make weight, we win, right? The second priority after that was to still PR the total if possible. Of course, lots of people had different predictions on, hey, it's her 52 kg debut. She's never actually competed that low before. If she does make weight, how much strength will she hold on to? And if she wins, how much strength will she hold on to? So we wanted to make sure that we could still PR the total to show that, hey, not only can we make weight here, but we can maintain pretty good strength as well. And then the third goal was, if possible, to hit a 460 kg total. So PRing the total doesn't necessarily mean that we had to hit 460 kg. Her previous best was 447.5, so anything over that would have been a PR total. But on the high end, like, we would have been very happy if we could potentially hit around that number, around that threshold. So those were the priorities as far as Megan. In terms of the game plan, I'm going to have it pop up on screen right here, but just to read it to you guys out loud. So for squat, our planned opener was 160 kg, 352 pounds. Our plan 2A was 170.5 kg, 375 pounds for the national record total. Our plan 2B was 168 kg, 370 pounds. Also would have still been the national record for the national record squat. Our plan 3A was 178 kg, 392, which would have given us another record. 175.5 kg, 386 pounds. Or 3C, 173 kg, 381 pounds. Any of these would have been a squat record, and then potentially even over the world record for the squat. So that's what our original plan was, and pretty much our hope was that, okay, we have these ranges laid out, right? And for those of you who may be wondering, like, hey, how do you come up with the ranges and stuff like that? You gotta go ahead and subscribe to Powerlifting Now, because I have a full video breaking that down in terms of attempt selection, what type of relative percentages we use based off the top end to determine second attempts, third attempt ranges, open, something like that. So you guys will have to subscribe and check that out if you want to look into that. But as far as, like, the game plan, that is what we had laid out, right? Now, with that being said, let's kind of go over what happened on the day itself. So Megan made weight. We weighed in at exactly 52 kg, which is exactly what we wanted. Because once again, the whole goal is to make weight, but preserve strength. So what I had Megan do was the Steve Novi gut cut, but instead of running it for 3 days, we ran it for 4 days going into the meet. And then I gave her a very specific water protocol that I want her to follow in order to just ensure that we're weighing right where we need to be. Because the goal was to weigh in right at 52 kg, which is exactly what we did. So at that point, we're like, okay, cool, we're in the game. We need to hit our list, hit our openers to get in the game, and by second attempts, we should have things fairly well wrapped up. So you guys saw what the game plan was. Let's kind of go over what happened on the day. So in terms of the actual day for the squat, we opened with 160 kg. the big thing with Megan is that first squat is huge for her nerves, right? She's very nervous. She can get a little bit anxious, so just keeping her calm, reminding her to like, hey, follow her cues, keep her upper back locked in, big toe pressure, controlling that descent so she doesn't dive bomb, hitting very clear depth, and trust herself to drive back through. So 160 kg, moved very, very well. We were good to go. And based off her warm-ups, we already felt like she was holding on to strength well, but the opener is what really showed us like, okay, yeah, we're in a really good spot right now, because the opener moved pretty much about the same way that 160 would in training, even though she was training heavier. She was training around like, at the heaviest 118, but a little bit closer to the meet. We're training around like 117 body weight. And of course, we're weighing at 52 kgs, so around that 114 mark. So with that being said, after our opener, we knew we were good to go. We felt like, okay, we don't have to adjust the second attempt plans. Let's just go ahead and load what we can. So we went ahead and loaded the national record of 170.5. And we got a depth call from the left judge on the side, but from the head judge and then from the right side judge, good to go. So we hit 170.5, secured that, and we're already good to go. So we're already really, really happy with that. At that point, we have a decision to make. In my mind, just based upon how the 170 moved, we could have gone for like, the 173 kg, the 381, or the 175.5, but just based upon how it moved and the speed, in my mind, I'm like, okay, let's go for the 175.5. She felt confident for it. It also would have given us like, the world record squat unofficially as well as the fact that in my mind, when it came to this meet for Megan, if we're hitting our second attempt, we already win. But this is also a meet for data. It's the first time she's weighing at 52 kg. And for the sake of not only winning, but going into worlds, I need to know what type of jumps we can make and what her strength threshold is like, right? So we ended up loading with the 175.5 and just couldn't quite get out the hole with it. Like we got a little bit out the hole, but then immediately kind of like folded over. And it's one of these things where typically Megan's not making just 5 kilo jumps from like, a second attempt to a third, or from a last warm up to a top set. We're making a little bit bigger jumps than that. But that's just one of these things where we're kind of getting an idea of, okay, where's your strength threshold is at? Because had we taken the lighter second, maybe she would have been able to have the third attempt. But our goal was to stick to the plan, stack the chips, stack the total. So that's what we did as far as the squat. So that's how squat went. And ultimately, we were still very, very happy with it, especially due to the fact that, like, technically everything we're hitting at this point is a PR for this weight class. But that with hitting that squat, we're still setting her up to beat her best total, which is at a whole weight class above for the 57 kg class. So squats ended up going really, really well. For bench press, we opened up with 95 kg, had no issues there. And, we've opened up around 97 before, we've opened around 100 before, but the reason we decided to open up with 95 is, once again, we are weighing in lighter, as well as we have to fill out what the commands are like for the day. Something I always tell people is that your bench press is the lift that's going to be most dictated by the judges on the day in terms of commands. You don't know how long the holds are going to be. You don't know how long the pauses are going to be. So making sure your opener is something you can smoke under any type of circumstances is important. So we opened up with 95 kg, moved very smoothly, no issues. Megan was reporting that she was having a little bit of issues in terms of really like being able to drive to the floor the way she wanted to. She felt like her feet were slipping a little bit on the carpet, but she still was able to move 95 kg with no issues. So we decided to then just do a nice 5 kilo bump to 100 kg. And that also moved really, really well. Now from there, we're pretty much stuck between, okay, do we want to take 100, do we want to take 100 kg or 102? And the reason being, right, is because when we opened with the 95 kg, or as you guys saw, like the original plan, like original 2A was 102 and a half, 226, or just 100, 220. Obviously, we end up going with 2B for 100 kg just because it's like, okay, 95 moved well, but let's be smart. Let's set ourselves up for the total that we want, which for that 460, if we just can get up to 105 kg, that sets us up for it. And keeping in mind, the 2A plan is kind of, we're feeling exceptionally good like we did in training. We were feeling decent, but maybe not quite as strong as we did in training, which makes sense. With that type of cut, the bench is going to take a hit. So we went with 2B for 100 kg. And then, our options as far as like, 3A, 3B, and 3C were, just in case, we had like the 103.5 kg, the 105.5 kg, the 108 kg, because those would have been the chips that we could have used for the record. But unfortunately, due to who we were competing against, that was already out the window, because we already expected there was somebody else that might use like the bench chips. And we also just want to be smart with like, okay, 105 versus 105.5, what's actually worth taking at that point? And for us, it's like that 0.5 isn't worth it if we can just secure the 105 and get the total that we want. So we ended up loading 105 for the third. It was one of those things where it was kind of like a toss-up, 102 or 105. And if it was a thing where it's like, hey, I'm trying to really play it extra safe, I probably would have loaded the 102. But since we are at this point, okay, we already hit what we need on the second to kind of just secure ourselves for what we need for the win. Once again, data and order of priorities, right? The first order was to make weight. We did that. The second order of priorities was to PR the total if we can. We're already kind of set for that on the second bench. And the third is that 460 total. So since we already secured what we needed to on the bench by the second as far as priorities 1 and 2, then I'm going to load what we need for priority 3, which was to try to get to that 460. So we loaded 105 and just didn't quite have it on the day. Maybe she would have had 102, maybe she wouldn't have been. Like I said, it's all about what the priorities are and the circumstances. So simply due to kind of what we had laid out for her, we decided to go for the 105. Just wasn't quite there. Now, at this point, going into deadlifts, my biggest focus for her was to make sure, okay, let's go 3 for 3 on the deadlift. Let's not push too aggressively. Let's not force anything. Let's just take what we know is there so we can ensure the biggest PR total that we want. Just because at that point, in order to hit like the 460, we would have had to like push way outside of the range what we had planned anyway. So in my mind, it's like, okay, on the deadlifts, we're gonna go 3 for 3, secure the win, secure a big day, and the PR total. So in terms of what we ended up doing for the deadlift, we took 160 kg as planned for the opener, moved really, really well. Deadlifts have really came alive this past prep for Megan, and it was the lift that we actually felt the most confident in because one, we felt like it was the lift that would be least impacted by the cut, and two, just the way it was showing up in training, her, no issues with her grip, being able to maintain really good position on the floor overall, and just driving through smooth to lockout. So we felt confident with that. But yeah, 160 for opener moved really, really well. So we went with the planned 2A, which was 175 kg, 385 pounds. And then based on how that moved, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, maybe we have the 185, which would have been like an outright all-time PR. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, 182 and a half is a fat meat PR for her. It lets her secure 400 plus on the platform, which is something she's wanted for a long time. And it still ensures that we have that nice PR total. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, I'm like, I want to do it smart. And she said, hey, I trust you. Whatever you go for the third, that's what we're going to go with. So put in 182 and a half. And with that, Megan ended up, she PR'd the total at a whole weight class down, which was just really, really cool because I know a lot of people had her projected around like, maybe potentially like, 430 and stuff like that. So to come in and be able to total 453, PRing her total, beating her all-time best at a whole weight class lower was awesome for her. Secured first place, secured her world spot, and also just built a lot of confidence. Like we now know, like, okay, we know about where your strength is at right now post the cut. We know how much time we have to build upon that strength, and we kind of have a better idea of what type of jumps we can make to have you feel good for like, the squat and the bench. And of course, we're doing the deadlift works really, really well. So that's what we did as far as Megan, and it went great. Like I said, it was a 7 for 9 day, right? Definitely wasn't a perfect day, but in terms of like goal expectations, I mean, 2 of those priorities were achieved, right? We made weight, we PR'd the total, despite her being a weight class down. We fell a little bit short of the 460, but once again, it was worth kind of pushing to see where things were at from a data perspective. So that's how things went for Megan. All right, guys, next up is Chris Perez for the 83 kg weight class. Now, Chris was interesting because out of everybody that, that I brought to Powerlifting American Nationals, Chris is the one who's had the least amount of time with me. We had 15 weeks going into this prep, so we worked together for 4 blocks essentially. And it was one of these things where a lot of what we were doing in those first couple of blocks was really getting a lot of stuff refined technique-wise, despite the fact that Chris has had coaching previously. There's just certain technical things that no one ever really went over with him. And a big thing for Chris was feeling more confident in his list, feeling more confident under loads. It's also the fact that he, before coming to me, was running like 8-week-long blocks. So he's really only touching heavier load exposure once every 8 weeks. So we found methods to be able to allow him to run 4-week blocks so that way he get heavier exposure more often and build more confidence with that, on top of getting him more technically proficient under heavier loads so that he wouldn't feel the need to get anxious or rush because he knows how to approach the lifts with confidence due to being more elevated with this technique, as well as the fact of kind of just figuring out different programming things as far as like, okay, hey, you've always done this, but you didn't know why it works. Now we know why this works. Or hey, you did this and we're making progress in spite of this, but you don't necessarily need this. Really just finding a good formula that worked well for him, which really we got that down the last like block and a half in terms of everything from the programming perspective. But going in, we already knew like, okay, in terms of securing the world spot, not only do we have to beat Delaney's 842 and a half, but we have to also place first over Russ and Angelo, right? So we knew that on paper, right? If Chris were to go in there and have his best day, and Russell was to go in there and have his best day, Russell would win. I pretty much had Russell predicted anywhere between like 860 in 870, more realistically closer to 860. But like if he were to able to like come in feeling exceptionally good, have that super meet, I put him around 870. And if he was, just feeling decent, 860. But even on a bad day, I was expecting him to be able to total 850, which is a little bit outside of Chris's reach. So with that being said, the priorities that we had for Chris, the first goal and priority was to simply go 9 for 9 and PR the total. Because going 9 for 9 and PR the total sets him up for the best possible position to still potentially win, or to potentially beat Delaney's total, right? It's one of those things where it's like, hey, if we just go in, we go 9 for 9, we PR the total, that's just going to put you in the best spot for the other priorities, which priority number 2 was to beat the 842.5 with 843, because at the end of the day, even if something happened where Russell made a bunch of mistakes or Angelo didn't show up as strong, even if we beat those two, it doesn't matter. We don't secure the world spot if we don't hit if we don't beat the 842.5 total, right? So hitting 843 is kind of like the second priority. And then the third priority was, if all else fails and Russ came in as strong as we expected, didn't make mistakes, was to at least ensure second place over Angelo. So with that being said, the game plan that we had for Chris was, our planned opener was 265 kg, 584 pounds. Our planned second attempt, 2A, was 280 kg, 617 pounds. 2B, as a contingency, was 277.5, 611 pounds. Our plan 3A was the all-time PR of 295 kg, 650 pounds. Our plan 3B was 292.5 kg, 644 pounds. And then our plan 3C was 290 kg, 639 pounds. For the bench, opening with 190 kg, 419 pounds. For second attempt, 2A, 200 kg, 440 pounds. 2B, 197.5 kg, 435 pounds. Plan 3A was 210.5, since the record at the time was 207.5. Anything that we hit over that, we could chip. So 210.5 for 464 pounds. Plan 3B, 208 kg for 458 pounds. And Plan 3C, 205 kg, 452 pounds. And then for the deadlift, opening with 300 kg, 661 pounds. 2A, 320 kg, 705 pounds. 2B, 315 kg, 694 pounds. Plan 3A, 337.5 kg, 744 pounds. Plan 3B, 335 kg, 738 pounds. And then Plan 3C, 330 kg, 727 pounds. Now, what you guys will most likely notice first here, right, is if you simply take, all of his 3As, that gives us 843 kg exactly. So it was one of those things where we knew it was a big ask to even come in and beat Delaney's total. We would have to show up perfect and feel our strongest ever on all three lists. But it was possible based upon things we had done in training. It was within reach based upon how he would feel. So we definitely didn't put it like out of mind as if it was a possibility, but it was plan 3A. For those of you who don't know, like I said, a full breakdown is on Powerlifting Now, but just for a little bit of insight, plan 3A is what we go for when like all the stars are aligned. We 100% know it's there, almost as though we feel like we're good for more than 3A. That's the only reason we take 3A. Unless, like, once again, we're doing something where, like, hey, we've already ensured the win, we're good, we're going to test things out, push it, why not? That's fine. But under normal circumstances, what 3A is for. Our planned attempt is essentially 3B. 3B is where we expect strength to pretty much show up, and then 3C is a contingency in case we don't feel quite as good as we expect to, right? So, with that being said, let's kind of go in over the actual attempts as far as Chris. So, coming in, we opened up with 265 kg, zero issues there, moved incredibly well. Chris is somebody where, like, he kind of has to kind of go based off how things kind of look or how somebody tells him to list, because it all kind of feels the same to him to a certain point. And that's something he and I are going to be working on, is like just helping him how to gauge how his body's feeling so he's able to give me better feedback so I can make even more precise calls. Since with Chris, I would say out of everybody, it was the one where I was really like truly just like, hey, whatever I say goes, because I'm making the calls and just, getting what little feedback from him that I can get. But 265 kg opener, flew on squats. Our 280 kg squat second attempt moved incredibly well, and what I'm looking for is like, okay, how well did this weight move in training compared to today? Like on the day when we were able to squat 290 plus, is it moving just as good? Is it moving worse? Is it moving faster? And it was one of the smoothest 280 kg squats I've ever seen him do. So with seeing that, I felt very confident for the 295. And it's one of those things, right, where it's like, okay, to even potentially set ourselves up for the day to hit that 843, we have to squat 3A, right? Now, if it was one of those things where his second attempt just moved in such a way where I just did not feel confident in it, then it's like, hey, the 843 total is just not there for the day. Let's just take what we can to PR your total and maybe secure second. But his second flew, so we ended up loading 295 kg, and it was the right call. I think it was the perfect call. He got it, moved very, very well. He was very happy with it. I was very happy with it. And at that point, it's like, cool, we are in the game. Now, going into bench press is the interesting one, because bench was kind of like, that's the lift that Chris has over both Russ and Angelo. It's the lift where like, we can really start to gain some ground. So starting off, we did open with the planned 190 kg, and it moved really, really well. No issues. Um, you know, the judging that day I thought was very fair and consistent across the board in terms of the holds and the pause for the bench. So 190 moved well. So we went to the planned 2A of 200 kg. With the 200 kg, it was interesting because essentially, like from my angle, like the control, the pause, everything was pretty decent. It looks like his touch was a little bit weird, but when he drove off his chest, it just moved. It moved hard. It moved a lot harder than what we were expecting it to. And when I talked to him, afterwards, he wasn't quite sure what happened with. He said, "Yo, it just felt heavy." So it's one of those things where somebody tells me it's kind of like a technical type of misgroove, and hey, I can clean up. I know I can clean up and fix it, and we can recognize what the technical misgroove is. Then maybe I'm willing to go up maybe like 5 kg or something like that. But with the way that it moved and him just saying that it just felt heavy and he wasn't sure why, I decided to play it safe with 202 kg for his third. Because once again, it's like, let's just stay in the game. Let's try to secure PR on the total. By this point, because it moved that way, it's like, okay, if we can't hit the bench that we want to, the 3A, then the 843 is already out of range. And more than likely, so is beating Russell. So at that point, we go down the list of priorities, and the priority is now like, hey, let's still PR the total, right? We still have priority number 1, and we still have priority number 3, which is going to be to still try to play second, which means we have to beat Angelo. So we can't afford to miss anything. 2.5 goes a long way when it comes down to it, especially with as big a pool as Angelo has over Chris. So we loaded the 202.5, and my guy smoked it. Like, it was one of those things where we were both, like, we were happy, God, we were so frustrated because it's like, dang, and then that moved so well. Like, but it let us know it was like more of a technical misgroove on the second attempt. But that's hindsight. Can't be mad at it. So by the time we were going into deadlifts at this point, just based upon the type of day Russell was having, we already felt pretty confident. It's like, okay, yeah, Russ is pretty much going to have this locked up by his second pull. Like, he's out of reach. He's going to secure first. That is what it is. And even if somehow he made a mistake, it wouldn't matter because the 843 total was out of reach. So securing the world spot was done. So at that point, going into deadlifts, our game was a matter of doing what we need to do to beat Angelo. So we, we start off with our opener of 300 kg, which moved really well. And the whole time this is going on, I'm watching Angelo. I'm watching his pulls to see everything. I've been at so many competitions at this point, and I've watched so many live streams of Angelo's deadlift. It's the homie. I watch his training, so I know kind of what his pulls look like. And from the moment I saw his opening deadlift, I was like, his deadlift is not on. It did not look on the way that I've seen him move that opening weight before. Just I could tell, like, nope, he's not quite there. Which lets me know, okay, I don't think I'm gonna have to push Chris super aggressively. I think we can probably end up taking 3B, maybe if we're lucky 3C, and be in a good spot, right? So for Chris's second attempt, we ended up going with 320 kg, and it moved very, very well. But it did not move with like that speed and power that I'm expecting if I want to give somebody 3A. So at that point, and me just going based upon like, okay, if Angelo wasn't involved right now, and then my goal was just to ensure that he hits his third deadlift, what would I put in? Which in this case, in my mind, was 3C. So I ended up putting 330 kg in there because in my mind, I'm thinking that's what Chris can pull, right? And then after Chris goes, I'm watching Angelo's second attempt, and what has to happen is for me watching Angelo's second attempt, I have to determine, do I feel like 330 kg makes the most sense, right, to stick with, or do I think I need to bump it a little bit by 2.5 or 5 based upon Angelo's second pull? I watched Angelo's second pull, and it still didn't look on. So at that point, I'm looking at what total Chris has, right? If we hit the 330 kg, which puts it at 27.5, and I'm looking at what Angelo would have to pull in order to hit that, right? Because they put in something else after Angelo's second, but I knew that was a bluff. I knew they were going to go for that. It's just too much at that point. But I looked at what he had to put in order to tie Chris's 827.5, assuming he got his third deadlift, and win on body weight, right? Because Angelo weighed in lighter. And just based off his second attempt, in my mind, I'm like, I think we're good. I don't think we need to bump it because I know Chris can pull 330. I feel very confident about that. Maybe 332.5, and I feel like even 335 might be a little bit out of reach. So we went to 330. Chris ended up pulling it. It was a very clean, well-executed pull, and by the time they said that was the right call. And then we watched Angelo's third pull, which would have tied Chris's total, but Angelo would have won on body weight, and he just couldn't quite lock it out. It was a little bit soft, so we couldn't quite lock it out. So very happy in terms of how that went. It was kind of like, it was one of those bittersweet feelings because, like, love Angelo, that's the homie, want to see him do well, but I'm glad that I kind of know his pulls and his training well enough to be like, yeah, I don't think the deadlift is quite there, and I think we can play it safe on this third pull and just secure our second place win. So we were happy with that. I mean, Chris literally had a perfect day. Like, all white lights on every attempt, 9 for 9, PR'd the total, and securing second place to Russell Orhe is definitely not bad, especially when so many people had him projected for third. So because of what we knew what things were going to look like realistically, where it's like, hey, if you have a perfect day and Russell has a perfect day, he still wins. The goal is, okay, well, let's just do the best we can, get the biggest total that we can while ensuring that we place as high as possible. So that went really, really well for Chris, and I'm incredibly proud of him. And I'm just excited because I already know for me, the longer I have with a client, the better things go. Like I said, out of everybody in this grouping, Chris and I have been working together for the least amount of time. So what we were able to do in just these 15 weeks going into the meet was awesome. And I'm excited to see what we do going forward the rest of the year. All right, guys, next is Pitre. And I'll start off by saying, first of all, the link to Pitre's like full YouTube recap will be in the description box down below because he goes into a whole lot more detail there than I'm going to go into this video. But for a little bit of background, because out of everybody, Pitre is actually the client I've been working with the longest out of this group. I've worked with Pitre since 2019. But this prep, right, despite the fact that, we knew we were going to be in a much better spot than what we've been the past couple meets because instead of having to cut to 90 kg, we're only having to cut to 93 kg. The fact of the matter is this was not a very easy prep for Pitre by any means. A lot of life circumstances going on, a lot of personal family affairs, because he actually ended up moving down here to the Fort Worth area, but was like on a daily and weekly basis having to drive back and forth between Fort Worth and Houston due to stuff that was coming up with family. So that's like a 5-hour drive there and 5-hour drive back. So due to that, it was having some issues with his leg. In terms of like just how it was feeling, right? And we've worked through injuries and pain stuff before, but this was something where it almost felt like his leg just wasn't firing off like the way we wanted to. Like he felt very unbalanced with it. So just due to that and other life circumstances, this wasn't necessarily Pitre's strongest prep. Like the heaviest squat that we touched was about 683 pounds. I think the heaviest bench that we got around to was like 434, 440. And I think the heaviest pull that he touched was back in December was like 771. And he hadn't touched anything that heavy since then, essentially. So it definitely wasn't an easy prep, but Pitre stayed locked in, still kept going to the gym, doing what he could do, make sure that he really prioritized his accessory work to keep fitness high and keep workload high. And the good news is, despite how his leg was feeling, he felt strong. The frustration was not being able to feel like he could really push and demonstrate that strength. But the good news is the block before the block being into the meet, our high exertion block, we were able to come in and touch some relatively decent load, right? That's when he was able to touch the 683 on squat. And get back in the 700s on the pull. I think we hit like a successful 435 bench. Actually ended up not hitting a 463 bench because he ended up having to like switch gyms in the middle of the session, re-warm up, and just didn't go well. But then the block but after having the heavy exposure, right? After having the heavy exposure, as well as me deciding to introduce a third squat day for his final block because I felt like him getting in the position more and more was good for his leg, as well as just letting him hold on to the fitness from the secondary day to kind of bridge the gap better, get a skill practice. Things really showed up the final block going into the meet, just in terms of him feeling strong, feeling healthy, feeling confident. So with that being said, in terms of kind of like, the priorities that we had for Pitre, priority number one was to beat Keiko's 893 kg total. Because as it stood right now, that was the total that we had to beat, right? Regardless of what Gavin did or didn't do, if we don't beat that total, we don't secure the world spot, right? So the first priority was to beat the 893 kg total. The second priority was to, of course, beat Gavin, right? If Gavin was set up for a less than 893 day, then by fulfilling priority one, we already fulfilled priority two. But if Gavin was looking strong to potentially beat Keiko's 893, then we had to beat whatever he does on the day. And our goal with having the bigger deadlift was to ensure that we could do that by the second pull if possible, and if not, definitely on the third. And then the third priority goal was, if it was there on the day, to still total 900 kg. Because based upon like the ranges and stuff that we have laid up, which I'll have on screen right now and read through for you guys, but based upon that, we thought that, okay, if we have a really good day, we show up feeling strong, we feel good and healthy, we might be able to manage this, right? Just depending on how things go with the squat. The squat was pretty much going to be a pretty big determining factor if we were going to go for like the 900 kg or not, as well as how his deadlift was feeling, and well as just how his leg was feeling. So just going to read through it very quickly as far as everything he has laid up. So for the squat, opener plan was 290 kg. Plan 2A was 310 kg, 683 pounds. And the reason why we needed that is because we were kind of looking at like, okay, what is the lowest we can afford to squat and then still potentially beat the 893 if the bench and deadlift showed the way we need to. And we kind of determined from our numbers calculations that 310 was that number. So that was 2A to try to secure that on the second attempt. 2B was 305 kg, 672 pounds. 3A was 320 kg, 705 pounds. 3B, 317.5 kg, 699 pounds. And 3C is 315 kg, 693 pounds. For bench, our planned opener was 195 kg, 429 pounds. Plan 2A was 207.5 kg, 457 pounds. 2B, 205 kg, 452 pounds. 3A, 215 kg, 474 pounds. 3B, 212 and a half, 468 pounds. And then 210 kg, 463 pounds. Then for deadlift, opener 337.5 kg, 744 pounds. 2A, 365 kg, 804 pounds. 2B, 360 kg, 793 pounds. 3A, 377.5 kg, 832 pounds. 3B, 375 kg, 826. And then 3C, 870 kg, 815 pounds. That is the original plan that we pretty much had laid out for Pitre. And it's one of these things where, like, and it's a perfectly reasonable question, but some of y'all may be wondering, like, okay, why, if he, wasn't able to really touch heavy loads during the prep, right? At least as heavy as what we ideally like, then why do we feel confident with that plan? It's because, once again, Pitre was still feeling strong. He was still doing the work. Yeah, he didn't necessarily push that top end, but Pitre is a veteran of the game at this point. And he and I have been working together long enough to know that we don't have to touch anything crazy to show up big on the platform. And even when Pitre has crazy preps, he always shows up stronger on the platform. Like, just the type of lifter he is. Like, he's somebody where, like, we touch what we can on the top end, but when we taper things back, especially a lot of that accessory work, he just really comes to life on meet day. So we just felt pretty confident that we'd be good to go. Really, in regards to that, like, we felt like, okay, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to manage these numbers within these ranges, like, in some way, shape, or form, right? So even though the attempts may seem a little bit like aggressive or maybe some of you unrealistic based upon, like, how I described this prep, as y'all can see, as y'all already know, if you're watching this video, everything worked out well. So let's kind of break down everything. So the first thing to note is that Gavin did not make weight. Pitre was pissed about it. I was pissed about it. We love Gavin. We have a lot of respect for Gavin, and we're really looking forward to being able to battle him directly head to head for that spot. But the only thing is, since he did not make weight, we realized that, okay, we know the goal then. The priority now is just we need to just beat the 893. If we do that, we have our spot. No matter what Gavin does, if he totals more, it doesn't matter because he was a guest lifter at that point. Obviously, in the back of our minds, we're still wanting to out-total Gavin on the day if we can, but that's not even, like, on the priority list. That's just kind of like, hey, if it happens, it happens, but we know what the goal is, right? So, with that being said, starting off, we opened with 290 kg, and it moved well. Like the best that it has moved in months at this point, right? So we know, like, okay, we're in a good spot. We're on, his legs are on. Because keep in mind, too, shout out to Matt Gary, because he was in the warm-up room helping my guys, because it's one of these things where, okay, on day one, I just had Megan, and on day three, I just had Bob, which we'll get to him later. But on day two, I had Chris Perez in the first flight of the evening session, and then Ashton and Pitre were in the second flight of the evening session. So obviously, I can't be two places at once. Well, y'all knowing me, I can be. I can make it happen if I need to, as far as running back and forth. But it's a very frustrating to do with timing, especially with the meet that's this important. But shout out to Matt Gary for being in the warm-up room. So that way, when I was on the platform with Chris, he was making sure that Ashton and Pitre were warming up and let me know how things were going. When I was on the platform with Pitre and Ashton, he was letting me know how things were going with Chris. So shout out to Matt for that. Very appreciative. But anyway, his arms were feeling good. His legs felt good. No issues, like no real pain or discomfort. So he smoked 290, no issues. So we decided to load the 310 kg, and he hit it. Not quite as easy as what we would like, but he did still manage to drive through with it. But which makes sense. When he did load it, it did kind of like irritate his leg a little bit. Like, he felt the pain and sensation again a little bit, which makes sense because he felt it on the 683, the block before the meet as well. Even when things were starting to feel better and healthier, it's like that certain low threshold, his body was still kind of acclimating to it. But with that being said, he came back to me after the second attempt, and I was like, what do you have left? He's like 690 something, whatever you think, 690 something. So me looking at everything, it's like, okay, that gives us either the option of 315 or 317 and a half. I know we can hit 315. Maybe 317 for sure, but I knew that 315 was there. I was like, and I even told him, I'm like, bro, keep that upper back locked into the bar. Take your time. Keep that upper back locked in. Keep that big pro pressure. Control it and just drive through. No matter what you feel, you have to drive through. Because I knew the 315 would still set us up for what we needed on the day. So it's like, why force 2.5 when I know we can hit the 315? So ended up loading that. And my boy executed. He got it done, hit the 315 kg, no issues, all white lights for all squats. So any, questioning about depth or anything like that, we put that to rest because we've really worked on things in terms of his technique, his stance, what feels comfortable for him. Like, it's automatic at this point. So that was a really strong start for us. At this point, I'm kind of looking at everything and I'm kind of looking at the numbers already, right? And me looking at it, I'm just like, okay, if we can ensure that we hit 212 and a half, right? If we hit the 212 and a half with the squat we already have, then if for his second attempt range, which originally was 365, I'm like, if we even bump that by just 2.5, that gives us the 895. So I'm already seeing that. I'm already thinking that. I didn't bring that up to him just yet because I wanted to focus on, like, I got to focus on getting Chris, at this point, getting Chris through bench, and I want him to kind of focus on warming up and see how he feels. I want to put any necessary pressure on him during his warm up. So he gets through his bench warm ups, and then we meet up, and I ask him how things feeling. He's like, things are feeling good. I'm feeling ready. He's like, all right, cool. Let's see what's up. And I let him know. I said, okay, well, if you're feeling good, based upon where your opener is at, if your opener flies, instead of 207, we could load 210, and then that way we see what's left from like 212, 215, right? So he loads his opening bench, 195 kg, and it moves well. It moves very, very well. He said that it felt a little bit like he was like slipping in his hand just a little bit. So he's just talking about, hey man, just take your time, get that wrist extended, really set the grip the way you need to, lock in for the second attempt. Let's just go with the planned second attempt, the plan 2A, which was once again 207.5 kg. He loads it, he smokes it, and we know we're good. We know like the way 207 moved, we're like we probably have 215, but as we discussed, all we need is a 212. If we do this, we're already setting ourselves up to potentially secure the total by the second deadlift. So that's what we ended up doing, loading 212 and a half. He hit it clean. Once again, all white lights on all benches, so there's no issues there. Now, in terms of the plan, since we already hit the 212 and a half, at that point we're already decided like, okay, we're going to make this adjustment on the deadlift. So originally, as I told you guys, we're going to open with 337 and a half, but as soon as bench was done, we bumped hit by 2.5 to 340 kg. So that way we could bump the plan 2A by 2.5 from 365 to 367 and a half. And part of why we did this too, right? It's funny, I was actually talking to Matt Gary's wife, Susie, about this after everything was said and done, was why did we decide to make that big a jump? Why did we go for the second? Because the moment that Pitre told me he started to feel his leg on the second attempt, right? Second attempt squat, and the fact that we have not pulled 800 pretty much since Nationals, USAPL Nationals last year, I knew, I'm like, Pitre is good for one 800-pound pull on the day. That's it. So it's like, at this point, it's better to go for it on the second. Worst case, if something's off with the sumo, we can readjust and try to come back again. But it's like, we need to bank it on the second, right? That was the plan. So we end up bumping the opener on deadlift to 340 kg. He hits it clean. And in that moment, like we know it's time. It's it. Like, everything he's been working for, everything that we've been building towards, we're like, we know this is it. So we load the 367 and a half, and he fights through it. Definitely wasn't the easiest that he's pulled that type of weight. But once again, we haven't touched 800 or let alone anything over 800 since Nationals, of USAPL Nationals back in September. But we knew, like, this is it. This is the moment. You've got it. The opener was well enough for us to know you've got it. Like, just fight through it. Don't quit. And he got it. All white lights on all deadlifts, and we ensured the 895 total, which matches technically his best total that he's ever hit, but he hit that total technically at the first Virginia Pro a little bit over the 93 kg weight class, so hit it officially for an official PR total in the 93 kg weight class, matched the current world record total, right? That was hit at Sheffield, and secured that spot. So that's really, I don't have too much to say as far as Pitre, man. Like I said, he kind of goes over everything in more detail in his own YouTube recap, but I'm proud of him. This was a long time coming. Out of all my people that were going and competing, the most doubt was placed on Pitre. Not from me, obviously, but from other people in terms of his ability to do it, his ability to execute. Can he beat Gavin? Can he beat Keiko's record? And he showed up and showed out. So I couldn't be more proud of him. And yeah, now we know what works. Like, that's the best part too. Like, through a lot of this stuff and a lot of these injuries and these ups and downs, you find what works, you find what keeps someone healthy, you find what structure gets someone strong, you're able to continuously do that and replicate it. So, especially with the fact that we now know for, these next 13 weeks, we shouldn't have any of these issues as far as like a lot of traveling and life circumstances, like just staying healthy and building off this baseline that we have. So, very excited to see how things go for Pitre going into IPF Worlds. All right, guys, next up on the same day, right? So I said Megan was day one, Chris Perez, Brandon Pitre, and who we're talking about next, Ashton Ruska, were all on day 2. Ashton and Pitre were on the same flight, going on the same session. So with Ashton, it's no secret that this wasn't exactly his healthiest prep. Pretty much, we already got pretty beat up going into nationals, pushed things pretty hard in nationals because obviously it was Ashton going against Bob, and neither of them could really afford to hold back against each other. And then post nationals, a lot of what we were doing was trying to just get him back healthy, especially in terms of his back. And on top of that, Ashton was going through a lot of different life circumstances. Bought his first house, going through getting ready for different promotions within the military ranks. Still having to go travel a lot for different stuff as far as the different rotation stuff he has to do for his PhD program, as well as the fact that he was having to do physical testing, which thankfully will be done here soon in the next couple of weeks. So that's a big part of why Ashton also weighed in lighter than what we were expecting him to. It's just because with all that physical testing and running conditions having to do, it's just a little bit hard for him to keep the weight on. But with that being said, our biggest goal, like collectively, right, and that's this isn't just the priorities, but the biggest overall overarching goal, right, was to try to come in healthy, compete, win, stay healthy, so we can just build on after that. So, like I said, we're feeling pretty beat up, but those last 2 blocks, the best Ashton had felt in a long while, and the healthiest that he felt in a long while. We still didn't push anything crazy. We restructured the way we approached everything as far as Ashton's training. We went down only training 3 times a week, benching all 3 days, only squatting and deadlifting once a week on that day 1. And day 2 and 3, besides the benching, it's just a lot of accessory work to kind of bridge the gap because we know that Ashton can train that way and still make decent progress and do well. And this was kind of like, hey, we're probably going to keep this 3-day structure even after nationals, which we did decide to do that going towards the 3-day structure. But now we're able to kind of introduce that secondary squat day. And with the deadlift, we're kind of going back and forth between sumo and conventional based upon kind of what felt healthy on the day. By the end of the prep, sumo was feeling healthier, so that's what we stuck with going into the day. So as far as the priorities for Ashton, so of course, priority number 1 was to place first because we have to place first in order to ensure that we, go to Worlds. And obviously we have to go up against, Mikey Davis and Nebo, and it's one of those things where it's like we aren't going to, we're not going to underestimate anybody, right? Like we can't just assume like, oh yeah, it's like in the bag because we knew we were 100%, and you don't know how strong someone's going to show up, right? So we felt confident that if we could hit the lifts that we wanted to, that we'd be good for the win. But it's about, do we feel healthy enough, strong enough to come in and do that? So of course, secure first place is priority number 1. Doing that by any means necessary, however many attempts we need to take doing that. But the second priority was to be, if possible, win with only 7 attempts. So wanting to only take 2 squats, 3 benches, and 2 deadlifts, just to preserve the back and keep from having to push too hard. We felt pretty confident that we'd be able to break into the 800 pounds by the second squat, so we felt like we probably wouldn't need to take a third one necessarily. Bench just had to go in there and go 3 for 3. And then for the deadlift, only taking a third pull if we felt like we absolutely had to by that point, based upon like what Mikey ended up doing, right? So that being said, the original plan for Ashton up on screen. Opener, 325 kg, 716 pounds squat. Second attempt, 2A, 363 kg for the national record in the Federation, 800 pounds. 2B, 358 kg, also would have been a record, 789 pounds. 3A, just in case we were feeling like super good and felt like, hey, if we can just push the squat harder and chill out on everything else, cool. We weren't feeling like this is going to be the case, but just to have it there based upon just what we typically take. 3A, 378 kg, 833 pounds. 3B, 375.5 kg, 827 pounds. And then 3C, 370.5 kg, 816 pounds. Then the plan for bench, opener was 200 kg, 440 pounds. 2A, 210 kg, 463 pounds. 2B, 207.5 kg, 457 pounds. Then plan 3A, 215 kg, 474. 3B, 212.5 kg, 468. And then 3C, 210 kg, 463. And bench was the lift since out of all 3, since his back wasn't really inhibiting it. Bench was super, super healthy. And this was the best prep we've had for Ashton's bench in a long time. Historically speaking, Ashton's always gone back and forth between like a really close grip and then like a wider a max grip bench, but this time we had him doing like, pinky on the ring, kind of like somewhere in the middle where it's close and stacked enough for him to feel confident with driving up and back without having any technical issues. But it's a shorter range of motion than the super close grip that he would sometimes historically use. So that showed up really, really well for us, and that's what we're going to continue to use going forward into Worlds as of right now. So we had pretty big numbers planned for Ashton's bench, but once again, as always, we're willing to adjust on the day if we needed to. As far as deadlift, planned opener was 325 kg, 716 pounds. 2A, 373 kg, 822 pounds. 2B, 368 kg, national record again, 811 pounds. 3A, 383 kg, 844 pounds. 3B, 380.5 kg, 838 pounds. And then 3C, 375.5 kg, 827 pounds. So that's the plan that we had laid out. Once again, first order of business, of course, was for us was to, hey, no matter what we had to do to ensure that we won, if that means we have to take more attempts than what we originally wanted to, that's what we'll do, depending on how strong the competition shows up. But if possible, winning on 7 attempts is really what we were trying to go for. So with that being said, as far as how the day actually went for Ashton, so for the squats, we did open up with 325 kg, and it moved well. It moved smooth, control, depth, everything. Like, it looked like Ashton's typical self. I will say, even from the opener, Ashton was already kind of like get into the zone that he gets into, like that warrior zone for himself, just because once again there is still that discomfort, and we know that we aren't at our strongest necessarily, right? So he's already tapping into that for the opener. But based on how the opener moved, it's like, okay, we're looking like we're set to stick to the plan and be able to only have to take 2 squats. So we went ahead and decided to load the 363 kg second attempt, 800-pound squat, and Ashton locked in. He got in the zone, sat down and stood up with the weight, man, and he got it done. So that, as far as squats, after he did that, we're like, all right, we're good. The back's okay, but we're still feeling it starting to want to flare up. So we're like, all right, cool, we'll cut it there. We only want to take 2 squats anyway. So that's what we did. We scratched the third, just stuck with the 2 squats. As far as the bench press, so on Ashton's opener, we took the 200 kg bench opener, moved well, but Ashton was still kind of like getting his groove a little bit on the bench. So we decided to adjust instead of going with a 207.5, which was the original planned 2B. So because after the way the opener moved, we weren't even considering 210 for the second. We're like, let's be smart. Let's get our groove with everything. But we adjusted down from 207.5 to 205. Ashton knows his body. He knows how to get in the groove with everything. So trusted that, went with the 205. 205 moved incredibly well. And at that point, we're like, okay, hey, all we should need right now, kind of based off like, what it looks like Mikey's benching, even though Mikey has a very big bench, but based on how much when we squatted, it was like, we should need more than 210. So we loaded 210 for the third attempt, and it moved incredibly well. So no issues as far as the bench press. And then on the deadlift, kind of very similar to the squat, we came in, we took the 325 kg opener, and decided, like, once again we're sticking with sumo, moved well. Decided that, okay, just based off of that, we want to be safe. We want to take what we know we can ensure that we have and should allow us to kind of chill at that point. So we took the 368 kg, the plan 2B deadlift, which was 811 pounds. And with that, we pretty much had the win secured and wrapped up. We ended up still loading 375.5 kg. We loaded the 3C to 827 just in case, and to see kind of what Mikey ended up doing. But even with Mikey, Mikey went out there for his third pull, didn't get it. So at that point, we decided, okay, well, we're good to go. We're not even going to take it. Even if Mikey had gotten it, we still would have been out of reach. But I think Ashton decided, like, out of respect, which I love this, was that if Mikey went out there and did his third pull and he got it, then he would still go for the third pull, just out of respect for that, right? But since Mikey didn't get his, Ashton decided, okay, well, let's not risk injury or aggravating the back. We're feeling pretty good and healthy right now. So we decided to scratch the third pull as well. Won on a 7-for-7 day, which is exactly what we wanted. And then the third priority, which I don't even know if I mentioned earlier, but hopefully I did, but our third priority was also, if possible, to get over the world record total, which we were also able to do that on a 7-10 day, mind you. So we came in, we got first, seven attempts put in, 7 attempts completed, and went over the world record total, knowing we have weight left in the tank and knowing that we now feel healthy. We feel good. Ashton feels great right now, so we now have the rest of this prep just to build in and do what we need to do at IPF World. So you guys already know, man, Ashton's a force, he's a juggernaut. 50-60% of the battle for Ashton's just staying healthy. We know how to do that. We know how to make adjustments. Like, Ashton's never had an easy prep. There's always stuff going on, which is just the nature of his lifestyle. When you're getting your PhD, you're in the military, it's not gonna, like, you're gonna just have ideal preps. But at this point, we've been working together for so many years, we know how to work around it. So very proud of Ashton. I expected nothing less. And I know that we're gonna do big things at World. So very, very excited for that. All right, and last but certainly not least, Bob Matthews, day 3 for the 120 kg weight class. So with Bob, this was definitely our strongest prep so far, just in terms of how everything was going overall. But there was just a few things we had to account for. So you guys may remember, that, Bob competed in that Texas meet in Houston in November as like his qualifying meet, the same one that Ashton did to qualify. And there, at that point, we were doing a very close grip bench, right? And not arching like quite as much as what we typically do, but still pretty decent arch and close grip bench to make sure that elbow depth was good. And that was working well. But then after that meet, he just wasn't feeling really good with it, wasn't feeling consistent with it, was getting very frustrated with it. So decided to go back to max grip, flat back, and to just sink. And that's what we were doing for Bob's bench for a while. Um, and we were getting up to pretty good strength. We got to a point where we were pretty much at a point where we could pretty much match what he was doing with his old max grip um, with a full arch setup. Like, on one day we came in, we hit like 518 and still managed to go up and hit 529 right after that. So bench was in a pretty good spot. Squat was in a really solid spot overall, just in terms of kind of like how much we were pushing, to what degree we were pushing. We definitely hit some heavier squat loads as far as like outright singles for USAPL Nationals prep going into September of last year, but squat was staying around where it needed to be, especially with acclimating to the new fatigue exposure of the conventional, because we ended up switching to conventional after nationals, and that's been going incredibly well. Like getting stronger every week, block to block to block. Bob's conventional has just been going crazy. So we were kind of banking on feeling pretty good in regards to everything. And originally our plan was like, okay, we're going to come in here, we want to test out maybe a new type of peaking. And the reason we want to test out a new type of peaking is because, for those you don't know, when he did his qualifying meet, he had his highest exertion SBD of the block on that Friday. And then he did his qualifying meet on that Sunday, which was fine because originally we weren't going to do anything crazy, but he was feeling really good. So we decided to kind of push that qualifying meet and see what we could do. So with seeing how well he was able to bounce back, right, from an SBD session, his highest exertion SBD session, mind you, just a couple of days before, made us think, okay, well, maybe instead of what we've done historically, where we kind of build into the meet, where our highest exertion block is doubles, and then we just have 3 weeks of singles building into the meet, where the meet lands on the week 4 single, we decided, okay, well, what if we do our highest exertion block of doubles, right? Like, so 4 weeks of doubles, and then just a 1 week taper of singles, where we come in and then compete on like we come in and compete like 2 weeks post the 2 weeks, like 2 weeks before the meet, and like like get a tape. So it pretty much goes weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, high exertion doubles, then a week taper singles, and then compete. Just kind of seeing how that works in terms of like testing out his fitness overall. We're like, see if you get a better response from that, just because of how well things went when you competed just a few days after your highest exertion SBD. So how much better would you be if it's like just a week or a couple weeks later? So that's what we decided to try out, right? But in terms of Bob and us, obviously being aware of everything that we had to do, because we did have competition in the form of Devin Williams, Big Dev. We knew that we couldn't just go in and do whatever we wanted to. We still had to play it smart, right? So, with that being said, in terms of Bob, as far as our priorities that we had overall, priority number 1, of course, was to secure first place, regardless of what that looked like in terms of like PR total, not PR total, maybe going for the overall total that we wanted. We had to secure first place to get the world spot. Second priority, though, was to try to gain victory over Devin by the second pool and ensure a PR total by the second pool if possible. So that way we could then lock in for our third priority, which was 1,000 kg total, right? So with that being said, on screen, I'll have what Bob's original plan was. So we had a squat opening with 325 kg, 716 pounds. 2A, 350 kg, 771 pounds. 2B, 347.5 kg, 766 pounds. 3A, 367.5 kg, 810 pounds. 3B, 365 kg, 804 pounds. 3C, 360 kg, 793 pounds. For bench, opening with 220 kg, 485 pounds. 2A, 235 kg, 518 pounds. 2B, 232.5 kg, 513 pounds. 3A, 245 kg, 540. 3B, 242.5 kg, 535 pounds. 3C, 240 kg, 529 pounds. Then for the deadlift, opening with 335 kg, 738 pounds. 2A, 367.5 kg, 810 pounds. 2B, 365 kg, 804 pounds. 3A, 395.5 kg, national record, 871 pounds. 3B, 390.5 kg, 860 pounds. 3C, 388 kg, 855 pounds. So that is what the overall game plan for Bob was. And it's one of these things where we knew we had to obviously prioritize beating Dev first. But if we're able to come in and hit the squat that we want, and hit the bench that we want, and secure the win by the second, then we can just shoot for that 1,000 kg on the third, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, it's Bob. Bob is the type of person where he's simply not going to be content with holding back unless he has to. That's just the type of person that Bob is. So with that being said, In regards to what things were looking like from an actual attempt standpoint. One second, let me just get this pulled up for you guys completely. All right, so turns out things went in terms of Bob's actual attempts. So on the squat, we opened up with a 325 kg, moved well, but we decided that, hey, just based upon how it moved and kind of how we were feeling, to go with 2B. And one thing we're recognizing with Bob's squats is he squats very nice tension controlled on the platform, but sometimes in training he still has this habit of kind of speeding into the hole a little bit. Which isn't necessarily the best for maintaining tension position, but he gets so used to that when he had us to kind of slow things down to just ensure he's good on the platform, it's like it just doesn't feel the same way. It's not the same groove. So one thing that we talk about with Bob is ensuring that we are the same way we squat on the platform. That's how we need to be squatting and training, right? So that's one thing that we're going to work on. But went with 347.5, 766 for the second attempt, and it moved well. But once again, it did not move in such a way where we're just like, okay, yeah, we for sure got this. And we noticed like there's like a little bit more of a stall out the hole from on the second than usual. And I really made sure that I watched his feet on the second attempt, and I could see like, him not keeping his toes completely like planted the way we needed to. So just remind him about that. The importance, like, hey man, you gotta drive those toes on the floor, feel that quad tension, don't lose that, hold on to that into the hole so you can drive through, right? So we ended up loading 360 kg, playing 3C for the squat, and it was the right call. He got it. He probably, could have had 362.5, but it's one of those things where it's like we cannot afford to miss a squat. Like, it's not this thing where like, where it like was with Ashton versus competition, where like, oh, we can like, just take, very low end range, like second attempts would be good. It's like, no, we can't miss on squats because Big Dev has a huge bench, and we know that. And as in our minds at the moment, our bench is nerfed, right, due to like the elbow depth rule, and most likely going to be flat back and seeing and stuff like that. So we knew that we couldn't afford to miss a squat. So what was most important for the squat was ensuring that we hit the squat. Not to mention the fact that that was still a meet PR on the squat. So we decided to go with that. As far as bench press was interesting because as Bob was warming up for the bench press, we noticed like, yo, your elbow depth is like stupidly good right now. So then we were looking at it and realized, okay, on the Aligo benches, what he's able to do as far as elbow depth is a lot better than what he's able to do on the benches that he has at his gym. So we decided, like, okay, well, let's see if we can get away with arching. So basically, through the warm-ups, we got to the point where we realized, like, okay, we can. Well, first we realized that we don't have to sink. He didn't even have to sink to hit elbow depth. Then we realized, okay, we can actually get away with arching some too. We weren't having him arch to his full extent. Now, with the max group, he was arching about 50%. But with being able to do that on our warm-ups, we then right then and there knew, okay, we might be able to change our jumps up a little bit, right, compared to what we had planned originally. We still decided we were going to keep the opener the same. We're going to bump the opener to then, like, bump the seconds. We decided we're going to keep the opener the same, with being able to arch to about 50% and not having to sink. If you're able to move 220 the way that we know you used to be able to in training, we'll know we can bump up the bench attempts if we need to just kind of lock in what we need on the second and then try to get a little bit more on the third, since once again, it's this mindset of if we can ensure priority number one, which is secure first and win by the second attempts, then that allows us to have a little more fun with the third attempt to try to set him up for the 1,000 kg total, right? And me knowing my lifter and how he is, I know that that's the option he'll want to take, right? So he ended up being able to arch about 50%, not having to sink, and we ended up opening with 220 kg, and it moved well. Like the moment he hit it, we knew like, yeah, we're good. We can adjust the plan. So we actually ended up jumping to 3C for our second attempt, 240 kg, to ensure that, because we knew that that was the bench that we needed. And if it moved in the way that we were hoping it was going to move, then we thought that, okay, we should still be good for anywhere from 245 to 250 after the fact. So with the 240 kg bench attempt, it moved well, but you guys can see coming right off the chest, there's like just a little bit of that stall and deviation where he kind of lost that stack position just a little bit. So we kind of tried to have him emphasize that. And then we also were told, even though we got the lift, that we had to be careful with his feet, make sure that his feet were completely flat, because just due to the shoes he was in, it didn't look like his foot was completely flat. So for the third, he had to put his feet a little bit more forward than what he likes, just to kind of make sure that there was no calls there, as well as the fact that, we haven't touched like it's been a while. It's like since he's done something like, touch like a 240 kg bench and then go up from there. So we decided after a second attempt, like, okay, you know what, let's just play it safe. Let's go at 245. We could have done 242, but it's one of these things where it's like 2.5 isn't needed. Like we already got what we need on the second bench to set ourselves up for what we want to do by the second pull to ensure the win. So it becomes more so a matter of like, okay, let's load what we need to get us closer to what we want for the overall total, which is that 1,000 kg total. So we loaded 245, just wasn't quite there on the day, unfortunately. But now that we know that Bob can in fact like arch and arch pretty well on the illegal bench to be good, that's a lot of good data for us in terms of, okay, maybe we do go back to a slightly closer grip so we can arch fully, or maybe we keep the max grip at arch at 50%. We're probably leaning towards just the full arch with like the closer grip because we think that we can just ultimately move overall weight that way. But it was good data for bench, and we still secured what we need to by that second attempt. Now, with that being said, we were looking at everything, and with knowing the chip that we had in play for deadlift, right? Because the current record was, I believe, was 372. With knowing that that chip was the current record, we want to really play into that in terms of like, okay, what do we think we can pull on the second to really try to force Dev out of his comfort zone to where he won't be able to pull enough, on his third to reach us, or if he tries to load enough to reach us or to push us more, he'll fail, right? That's kind of what we wanted to go with. So with us looking at everything and calculating the numbers, and shout out to my client Pat, who's also back there with us. Like, we're going over the numbers together, stuff like that, and we're like, okay, based upon what he tried to go for in training, Dev tried to go for in training and missed. We were thinking like if we push him to like that 385 mark or more, we were pretty confident that he won't be able to touch that. Maybe we didn't have to push him that hard, but I know Bob as a lifter. Bob isn't the type of person where he wants to risk leaving anything to chance. He doesn't want to take like, okay, if we do this, it should be enough. It's like, no, what is 100% sure enough to push him out of reach, right? So for us, we determined that that number was 378.5 kg, right? Which we felt very confident that Bob could do, because that's like 834 pounds. Our best double in the gym was like 820 something, and conventional was feeling strong. He was feeling amazing on the day. So as far as like the peaking and tapering, it was going exactly as we were expecting it to on the deadlift. So we decided to bump his opener from the original plan of 335 kg to 345 kg. So we bumped his opener to that. That ended up moving incredibly well. And as a result, it allowed us to then load the 378.5 kg for his second attempt. So that's what we decided to go with. And it moved well. It moved well, like a little bit shaky, but it's a conventional PR for him in terms of like, the most he's done like conventional style. And it's just one of these things too, where it's like, hey, if this ensures the win on the second, then we can kind of just load up wherever we want for the third, right? So, we do that for the second. And we already saw what Dev put in for his third. And it's like, okay, it's not going to be enough even if he gets it to catch us. So we can kind of do whatever we want on our third attempt, right? And even if he would have decided to change it last minute, we just based upon how Dev's second moved, we're like, we're good. He's not going to be able, we didn't believe he had the strength to pull enough to then come in and match what we already did with 378.5. So we decided to put in 390.5 for his third deadlift, for the mere fact that that would have given us 990. We knew 1,000 kg was out of reach at that point, just based on how the second pull moved. We didn't want to risk it too much. Plus, he was starting to feel his back a little bit. But we decided, hey, we're here. Like, let's just go for everything on the third. Let's see if we can get into that 990 range. And even though his legs felt good and felt strong, his back was just too taxed by that point. We couldn't quite get it on his third. But with that being said, with the total that we ended up putting up, right? Which was, the 978.5 total, right? One, he tied the unofficial 120 kg world record total by different deals that stood for years. So that was awesome. It was the highest drug tested 110 kg total ever, since, Bob only weighed in at like 106 kg, right? Because it's like just due to some of the traveling and like the eating and stuff like that, like he just weighed in a little bit lighter than what he'd been walking around. I'd been walking around closer to 107, 107.5, but in a weighing around 106. So he did that. Second highest drug tested total ever in the 120 kg class, and then 16th highest drug tested total of any weight class. Like I said, we got the squat meet PR, tied his best on bench, and then got the conventional meet PR, which was also awesome. So we were really, really happy with that. And the thing that we also realized was that even though this form of peaking does work and he does feel really strong, it's hard to recover from, which makes sense, right? Because he's taking his highest exertion lifts a couple weeks out versus like a full block out. So what we're going to be doing for this next prep is just building in the way we typically do, whereas highest exertion block doubles is a block out, and then we have 3 weeks of singles just to build in, and then hit that big single when it's time. We just know that's going to be better for us overall, and we think the deadlift's still going to show up just as well as it did regardless, but we think he'll feel a little bit better in terms of the squat and bench. And even though he felt strong on all three, it's just like that back. We need the back to be recovered so we can really push things the way we need to at Worlds. But ultimately, we came in, secured first, ensured the world spot by the second pull, and then still were able to have a little bit of fun with the third. So that's how everything went in regards to Bob. And I mean, it's Bob era, man. It's Bob doing Bob things. If we can get this man to at least like 108 kg by Worlds, it's gonna be a good time. So yeah, very happy with how Bob did overall. All right, guys, and that is it for the video. Like I said, I just wanted to be able to give you all some more context, more background on how things went for all of them, a few details about their preps, kind of let you know what the game plans originally were, why we ended up doing what we did. So now you guys have full context. You don't have to guess or assume one or speculate. And this is something where I might start doing more videos like this, at least like with certain clients where I think, it's interesting enough for people to maybe be curious or to care about like what we did. Maybe I'll do something similar for Worlds for all of them who are going to Worlds. But all in all, I'm just, man, it's surreal. It's like it's been a few days at this point since Nationals, and I'm still just feeling very happy, very thankful, very blessed for all the work that that my clients have put in, that I put in on the coaching front, and we showed up and we showed out and we did it, man. Like despite whatever standards people think that we were going to be able to uphold or whatever doubts people had, we came in and we did our thing. Very proud of Team Craftsmanship and very proud of them who are going to now be representing Team USA at IPF Worlds. And I'm very, very excited to be there, excited for them to do their thing. But yeah, just wanted to go over all that with you all. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you did. If not, leave a comment down below. Let me know what can get better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.